Welcome. This is Sophia Laijo. For those of you who are new to this channel, I invite you to subscribe to follow the new material that keeps and continues to come forward. And this is a place to connect with one another and to also grow, because even if I reach to 1, 2, 3, 50 people, whoever that is, if each one of us is able to create a transformation within us, then that transformation impacts your world and therefore your community. And that it's major impact when you go from the energy of fear into the energy of love, has an immense impact, not only in your life, but in the world. So one person at a time, one step at a time, one gets far. So my intention here is not only to provide information that is available to all, also continue to expand the web of love and awareness that in the empowerment, empowering yourself in love, empowering yourself to be the change and see the change you want to see in the world, because it starts with you. And you are a powerful powerhouse of transformation and therefore creation. And so in this video, I want to speak about the power of self-inquiry. As you can see, and in all of my teachings and my videos, I bring questions. And these questions are usually a soulful inquiry. They activate reflection. And why do I do this? I do this because um, with the self-inquiry, you bring the attention back to yourself. So you begin to observe yourself, and by observing yourself, you create a distance within yourself, your emotion, and also your experience. As you create that inner distance between your emotion and your experience, you're able to see beyond the experience, beyond the story that you're telling yourself. And so in that beyond of the story that you're telling yourself, you're opening yourself to new possibilities, and therefore you're expanding your level of consciousness. And so when you change your perception, and thanking the change of perception, when you see the world through a different lens, that's a change of perception. You are changing and you are expanding your consciousness. And that comes with a shift in your neurology. So in the way you think and you process the information. And so I want to bring this information back to the foundation. So let's start from the beginning, that you are energy. So you are energy, you are light, and therefore you are information. The information that you are vibrating in creates an energy field. And that's what is called your vibration. And so through that vibration, life itself has a vibration as well. So life is information as well. The earth is information as well. It's light, it's energy, and creates an energy field. So you are a field inside a field. The larger field is the universal intelligence, the loving awareness that brought you here into life. From nothingness, from pure energy into form. And here in this experience is the experience of polarity, duality, therefore polarity. We have come to understand that duality is that separation of positive and negative. I invite you to bring it into polarity. Instead of duality, into polarity. It's a positive charge and a negative charge. The positive charge and the negative charge. Create a polarity, create a magnetic field. Therefore, create a field. Opposites attract. So when you put the battery you have the positive and the negative. When you put it, it creates an energetic field. And so the pole, you have a pole as well, the center, the central channel of energy creates the top of your head, the bottom of your feet, creates a positive and a negative charge, but creates a field. The same thing with the earth, the North Pole and the South Pole, that central axis of the earth, the North Pole and the South Pole with positive and negative charge create the energy field. So you are energy. Everything is energy. You contain information that you are energy. You contain an energy field that it's emanating information. The same thing for Earth. The same thing in everything. So this is the basis. So the information that you are emanating or broadcasting, just as you're tuning into the radio, just as you're watching a movie. Let's bring the movie example. You go and watch a movie. You get so invested in the movie that you forget that what you're watching is a movie and it's not real. You forget that the characters are actually actors creating a story and they're acting. That's what happens. The way you perceive life is depends on the story that you're telling yourself. The story that you're believing creates your experience, creates a filter of your perception. We forget we're constantly living the story that we continually telling ourselves. So you live the story that you tell yourself. And there's a process through the self inquiry of waking yourself up and taking a step. And finally, you're able to see that movie and say, okay, I'm watching this story, this movie, but I know that's a character, that's an actor pretending, right? So you get that distance between your emotions and between the story of that you're telling yourself about the experience. So in this sense, um, coming back to why certain experiences repeat itself, you can change your actions and yet you keep living over and over again the same experience. Perhaps it's a different person with a different name, but it's the same energy. And so why this happens is because you never took the time and yourself all the way back to the observer. So in coaching, for example, yes, you can change your actions and do this action to get this result, do this action to get this consequence, but you never really observe what is the story that you're telling yourself. So this is what we do in the Empower Lab coaching and many in transformational coaching and spiritual coaching, in ontological coaching, that are all basis of my work as well. But specifically here, self-inquiry, this is what it does. It opens you up into questioning why. What are you seeing? Why are you seeing what you're seeing? What is the interpretation that you're making about what you're seeing and believing about? And so we're basically through the self-reflection, you are creating an observer that is conscious about what is experiencing. And so the first step is, and also this other piece of understanding is that the actions that you take are in relationship to what you believe. So if you believe you are powerful, you're going to make a certain choices. If you feel like you're not powerful, you're going to make certain choices. And so your choice is also in alignment with your belief system, with your paradigm. So the paradigm is basically that whole story that you almost stop questioning the validity if it's real or not real. Paradigms can be from paradigms in your family that you were born into, even cultural paradigms. And so, something that these 2 years have been moving and breaking the foundation is of paradigms. The way that the security, the way that you live your life is no longer the way that is used to. That is opening and breaking through and giving us all the opportunity to reassess, to question the realities, the way of thinking, what is true and what is not true, what is real, what is not real, to have the opportunity to see what stories have we been telling ourselves about what is true, about who you are, your relationships, and life itself and the world. And so the first step here is to observe. So taking a step backwards, detaching emotionally from the situation that you're experiencing and observing. It's almost like you are taking that step into the tower and just witnessing from above, from a higher perspective, having that eagle vision about what is happening. So you get a larger perspective. You get kind of like the unity consciousness where you're not judging anymore. You are beyond the polarity. You're not saying, you're not attached to an outcome. I want this, I want that. This is the right solution. This is the wrong solution. This is the right outcome. This is positive. This is negative. So there's no judgment. You're beyond judgment. You're beyond blame. The other piece about unity consciousness is that you stop blaming the other. You stop blaming anything that is outside yourself, because you're returning home to yourself, to your own sense of responsibility, because you know that you are a field within a field. Everything that is reflected back from the field, it speaks about you and you alone, because you are an expression of life. The other piece that I want to bring forward is that because life, the field is life itself, and life wants to create more life. So there's also always expansion in life. The universe is in continual and infinite expansion. So you are expanding because you are life itself, but you're in a continual process of expansion. So everything that is happening for you, through you, within you, it's about expansion. So for your highest and best. So coming to this foundation that life is happening for your highest and best. And instead of going into blaming others and in a way giving the power to something outside yourself, you're taking ownership about your experience. Because if something outside yourself is activating, let's say, frustration within you, it's about you. It's about the story that you're telling yourself, and maybe a story from a past experience that it happened in your childhood, and that you created a meaning about that experience. If you were crying and your parents were busy, were working, and that experience, you created a sensation of feeling abandoned or rejected, and now it creates frustration because you were crying and nobody was hearing you, and in that it aligned to your voice and speaking your truth. So you see, from a series of experience, you created a meaning. So now what you are seeing outside in the world, in the larger field, in your landscape, what is the interpretation that you are having? It's in direct relationship to that story that you're telling yourself through that filter. So what is the truth? What is the reality? What are you willing to see and to open up as well, to see to a new level of perception? So every time there's a conflict, it's an opportunity for growth, because it's an opportunity to deepen the relationship with yourself, to know yourself in a deeper level, and for an opportunity for expansion. I'm going to share a personal story that many, many years ago, I started to cycle everywhere, and I started to do tours, cycling tours, like where I'm a whole week on the bike and traveling and camping and so on. And I would do full days, maybe 8 hours cycling and then camping and sleeping and so on, and continue like that. And I remember a few things. I remember at the beginning when I was practicing, I every time I saw a big hill, uh, uh, I would try to go another way. And so I remember this time where I lived in Vancouver, BC, and I lived in a really high area, beautiful area, but really high. And there was, to get to my home, there was this big, big, big hill. And I don't know, let's say for the past 6 months, I avoided that hill. It would take me maybe like 20 minutes longer to get to my house, but I went to a different route that it was way longer, but it wasn't as hilly as going through and facing that hill. There got one day after, I don't know, let's say 6 months, I found myself heading to the hill. I was getting back home and I was on the hill and I was like moving through the hill and it was a breeze. And so there's a part of me in my head that's wanting to that critic. And so it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I waited so long to get on this hill. It was so easy. It was just like nothing. And so I took that moment to step into the observer and see what was the learning of the experience. There was a few gold nuggets there because one, I realized that to get to a solution, to get from A to B, we're so trained to get to a solution. When there's a conflict, we want a problem solved, right? We want a solution. And the solution is not linear. And that's what I learned. If I didn't have those 6 months of training and going through larger distance and maybe lower hills, that big hill wouldn't have felt such an easeful experience because it was an easeful experience. So trusting the process, that life, that larger intelligence, that field is leading you in your highest and best, in that road of that path of least resistance. That is training. My muscles were training. My body was getting trained and strong and really, really strong. So then when faced with a big mountain, it felt like nothing. But if I faced that mountain the first day, I wouldn't have finished it. Maybe I would, have gone to this place of, I don't know, I can't do it, and so on. So the piece here to understand is that when you change the perception, when you observe yourself and you see in clarity and you change your perception, your consciousness expands, your way of the pathways in your brain change as well. So you create new neural pathways. So is that plasticity, neuroplasticity, that in a way it's you're using your brain in a different way. So perhaps before a certain conflict looks simply a certain way, and it was just this way, this narrow, the horses, that is just this narrow way of thinking, and now it's like the whole 360. So your brain has a larger capacity of thinking and seeing something, right? So you get that eagle eye vision, and in that your consciousness is expanding, and in that you realize that that experience or that challenge, let's say, that you didn't believe you were able to move through, now you understand you are. So, um, hmm, the things that you believe that you weren't able to do or accomplish, that because you didn't see them, you weren't able to see them, it was on that blind spot. You were still in that old story. Now you can see. And this happens a lot because a lot of the trauma and a lot of the stories that are still repeated in a pattern and an automatic are stories and experiences that happen in your childhood and things that as a child perhaps you weren't able to achieve because you were a child, you were a baby, and now you're an adult. So you have different abilities and capacities, and you have a different experience and understanding about who you are and life itself. And so, this piece about returning through self-inquiry, returning the almost like bringing you back online to waking you up from the dream, from the automatic. So, in order to do that, you have to return back home to this present moment, connect to your heart, and observe. So, detach yourself from the experience and the emotion and observe. And then in the silence, allow the answer to come through, not because you want a certain outcome and push the outcome, but because you're trusting in that infinite intelligence. You will begin to see that a whole new world opens up. And so the simple questions you can always ask is why, for what? Sorry, for what are you having this experience? For what? What is the reason? What is the purpose of this experience? What are you learning? Who are you becoming as you have this experience? What are you learning? What is the treasure of this experience? What aspect of you gets activated as you heal this experience, as you feel empowered in this experience to create the change and empower the change that you want to see in the world and in your life? And so, for what? What is the reason of this experience? What is the reason and the purpose? What is the gift and the treasure of you living this experience? What is the feeling? What is the emotion that you're having as you find yourself in this experience? And allow the emotion to be there because the emotions are the language of your soul. And as you are experiencing, you allow and you give the space to experience the emotion, that happens a natural healing on its own. The emotion that you're feeling is that love and express love, and that it's in direct relationship of the level of love that you are and that life has for you as well. And that discrepancy and misinterpretation of what you're capable or not capable of doing, of the experience that you want to have and the one that you think you can't have. And so allow the emotion to be there, because through the feeling of the emotion, and give your space for the emotion, because through the emotion, there's a healing that occurs. And through the self-inquiry of what is this emotion teaching me? What is the gift of this emotion? What is the message of this emotion? What is the gift of this experience? What am I open myself to through this experience? What new level of awareness of seeing yourself, seeing another, and experiencing life is opening you to? What new possibilities are there? Are you willing to see the world, this experience, yourself, others in a different way, in a new perspective? What are you willing to bring light to? So you are the one that can create the change because you are the one that is experiencing your life. And so through your thoughts, the power that you have by observing the way you're thinking, the way you're perceiving. So when you are confronted to a situation, One, know that when there's a conflict and the gift of that experience, whatever you had to go through in that conflict, there was a learning for you. There was a learning for the other person as well. Release the polarity and hold the gift and the treasure. Who have you become because of that experience? What was empowered within you? What aspect was empowered within you because of that experience? What new levels of awareness have you reached? What was the treasure of that experience? What did you learn through that experience? Instead of blaming, instead of being attached to resentment, instead of feeling guilt and shame and judgment, come back to love, come back to the gift of the experience and what you learn and what is opening up for you and who are you becoming and who have you become because of that experience. Um, because ultimately you make the decision of how do you want to live your life and how do you want to move through each experience. And the gift when conflict comes, it's immediately an information of growth. You're expanding. That's why there's conflict, because you're expanding and it's an opportunity to expand. So is that hill, that you're like, oh my God, is that hill? So on the other side of that conflict and that challenge, there's expansion. There's a new level of consciousness. There's a new level of experiencing yourself because your consciousness widens. What you didn't know before, you know now. And there's an expansion there. And so in that expansion, you're seeing yourself, you're experiencing yourself, others, and the world in a different way, and therefore you're opening yourself to different possibilities. So now it's not about that you change the action. Now you went all the way to source, to the observer. As you observe yourself and a situation and experience of life in a different way, your thoughts begin to change because what you believing about yourself and others and life has changed. So your actions are different because you're stepping into life in a different way. Everything changes when your internal world changes. When your perception, when the story that you're telling yourself changes, everything else changes because the information within you, perhaps you've been dialed on 99.9 your entire life, and now you're tuning into, I don't know, 103.33 station. And so everything changes. The melody is a different one. So that's the power of self-inquiry. So I hope you like that. I send you a big, big hug and